Chosen one. Archangel Michael says what was delayed is now being released in your name. Do not scroll. Do not skip this message. Stay until the very end, because heaven is about to reveal why things felt blocked for so long, and why the spiritual atmosphere around your life is suddenly shifting tonight. This is urgent, this is prophetic, and this message found you for a reason. My beloved child, listen carefully. Archangel Michael is standing beside your path right now saying, if they leave too early, they may miss the confirmation. Heaven is urgently trying to place into their spirit before the release begins. Stay here, because what God is about to release into your life will make the delays of the past finally start making sense. Chosen one. There were seasons where you questioned whether your prayers were being heard at all. You waited, you hoped, you remained faithful through disappointment after disappointment. Yet doors stayed closed, opportunities disappeared, answers seemed delayed longer than your heart could emotionally understand, and secretly, part of you became tired of waiting, tired of rebuilding hope after every setback, tired of wondering when your life would finally begin moving forward again. But heaven says the delay was never denial. Read that carefully again. The delay was never denial. Type Amen if you still believe God has not forgotten you. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says, many chosen ones misunderstand delayed seasons because they only see silence while heaven sees preparation. There were things God needed to remove before release could safely happen. Certain people had to lose access to your energy. Certain mindsets had to break. Certain emotional wounds had to heal first, because premature release without preparation can destroy what heaven intended to bless. Read that carefully again. Preparation protects the blessing. Chosen one. The enemy wanted delay to convince you that your future had expired. Darkness hoped waiting would slowly weaken your faith until you settled beneath the destiny attached to your life. That is why discouragement followed you so heavily. That is why emotional exhaustion became so familiar. That is why confusion attacked your spirit every time breakthrough felt close. The enemy feared what would happen once the release finally began. Do not scroll now, because this next revelation is critical. Archangel Michael says heaven has already signed approval over things that were once delayed around your life. Read that carefully again. Heaven has already signed approval. Doors that remained silent are beginning to move spiritually. Conversations delayed for months are beginning to align. Opportunities connected to your future are already shifting quietly behind the scenes. And some blessings you thought were permanently lost are about to return differently than before. Type 1111 if you believe your release season has begun. My beloved child, there is another reason the delays lasted longer than expected. Earlier versions of yourself were still emotionally attached to environments connected to survival mode. You tolerated instability because pain made chaos feel familiar. You ignored discernment because loneliness made unhealthy attachment feel safer than separation. But suffering changed you. Now your spirit recognizes manipulation faster. Now your peace matters more than temporary attention. Now your soul craves alignment instead of emotional confusion. And heaven says this growth prepared you for release. Chosen one. There were nights where you almost gave up completely because nothing around your life seemed to move. You prayed for change while carrying invisible exhaustion privately. You watched others receive blessings while your own doors stayed closed longer than expected. But Archangel Michael says heaven was not ignoring you during those seasons. God was protecting the timing. Read that carefully again. God was protecting the timing. Some blessings delayed would have overwhelmed the old version of you emotionally. Some opportunities arriving too early would have connected you to the wrong people. Some doors opening before discernment matured might have delayed your destiny even further. So heaven waited until your spirit became stronger. My beloved child, the release beginning now is connected to more than material blessing. Heaven is releasing peace, clarity, direction, restoration, confidence, emotional healing, even your ability to trust good things again after surviving disappointment for so long. This is why your spirit has felt restless lately. Your soul senses movement approaching. Type 777 if you feel something shifting around your life. Chosen one. There are angels surrounding your future assignment because the release attached to your name carries purpose bigger than personal comfort alone. What God is opening now connects to calling, to alignment, to people and opportunities capable of strengthening your spirit instead of constantly draining it emotionally. And this is why darkness fought your mind so aggressively during the waiting season. The enemy wanted your spirit emotionally exhausted before release arrived. Why? Because tired chosen ones often stop expecting breakthrough, even when heaven already approved it. But heaven says your expectation must rise again tonight. Read that carefully again. Your expectation must rise again. My beloved child, there is also someone listening right now who secretly fears disappointment returning once more. Part of you wants to believe this message deeply, but another part still remembers every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every painful delay. Heaven understands that fear, but Archangel Michael says this release carries different energy than previous seasons because you are no longer the same person who entered the waiting season. Pain deepened your wisdom. Delay strengthened your patience. Loneliness deepened your relationship with God, and betrayal sharpened your discernment. You are prepared now, chosen one. Before the release fully manifests, heaven needs you to stop mourning what was removed during the delay season. Some relationships ended because they could not survive your elevation. Some environments became uncomfortable because your destiny outgrew them spiritually. Some opportunities disappeared because they were connected to smaller versions of your future. Nothing heaven removed was random. Read that carefully again. Nothing heaven removed was random. Type Amen if you trust God's timing now. My beloved child, very soon there will be visible evidence that the delay season is ending around your life. A burden will lift, clarity will increase, doors will begin responding differently, conversations will align unexpectedly. Opportunities once blocked will begin moving with unusual speed. And when that happens, you will finally understand why heaven kept telling your spirit not to give up during the waiting season. Because what was delayed was never denied. It was simply being prepared for release in your name. But now, chosen one, Archangel Michael says the spiritual atmosphere around your life is beginning to change rapidly. Because heaven has entered the release stage after a long season of preparation. What once felt permanently blocked is beginning to move. What once felt impossible is beginning to align. And the delays that nearly broke your confidence are about to reveal hidden purpose you could not fully understand before now. Do not scroll now. Stay with me carefully because this next revelation may completely shift the way you view every painful delay you survived. My beloved child, there were seasons where nothing around your life seemed to respond no matter how hard you prayed. You knocked on doors that never opened. You waited for conversations that never arrived. You hoped for movement while silence stretched longer than your strength emotionally. And slowly, delay started affecting the way you saw yourself. You became cautious with hope. You stopped expecting quick answers. You learned how to emotionally prepare for disappointment before opportunities even appeared. But heaven says delay trained endurance into your spirit, not rejection. Read that carefully again. Delay trained endurance into your spirit. Type Amen if you believe God was strengthening you during the waiting season. Chosen one, Archangel Michael says many delayed blessings carry hidden protection inside them. Earlier versions of yourself were emotionally connected to people who could not safely accompany your future. You trusted too quickly. You tolerated confusion too easily. You allowed emotionally draining environments to shape your peace more than they should have. But the waiting season changed that. Now your discernment notices danger faster. Now your spirit values alignment more than emotional intensity. Now your soul protects peace instead of sacrificing it for temporary acceptance. And heaven says this transformation made release possible, because blessing without wisdom often becomes destruction. Read that carefully again. Wisdom protects release. My beloved child, there is another reason the enemy attacked your thoughts so aggressively during the delay season. Darkness understood that if your spirit remained hopeful long enough, the release attached to your name would eventually arrive. So fear became the weapon. Discouragement became the strategy. Emotional exhaustion became the attack. The enemy hoped waiting would eventually convince you to stop expecting anything good from God anymore. That is why hopelessness felt so heavy sometimes. That is why emotional numbness followed repeated disappointments. That is why you secretly wondered whether breakthrough belonged to everyone except you. But heaven says your endurance frustrated every attack sent against your destiny. Type 1111. If you are still standing after every delay, chosen one, there were nights where your spirit became so tired that even praying felt emotionally difficult. You smiled publicly, while privately wondering how much longer you could survive the waiting season. Some mornings you woke up already exhausted because disappointment had repeated itself too many times. But Archangel Michael says heaven was watching every silent battle carefully. Every tear mattered. Every prayer mattered. Every moment where you chose not to quit mattered. And now the release season is beginning because your spirit survived long enough to reach divine timing. Read that carefully again. You survived long enough to reach divine timing. My beloved child, the release attached to your life now carries different energy than anything you experienced before. This is not temporary emotional excitement. This is alignment after preparation. The doors opening now will connect to your healed identity instead of your wounded patterns. The people entering your next season will strengthen your peace instead of constantly threatening it. And the opportunities approaching your future will not require endless emotional survival to maintain them. Because heaven is releasing alignment, not confusion. Type 777 if you believe your alignment season has arrived. Chosen one. There is also someone listening right now who secretly fears becoming hopeful again, because disappointment taught you to emotionally protect yourself from expectation. You became careful with faith because previous delays hurt too deeply. Part of you still expects something to go wrong every time peace begins appearing around your life. But heaven says, your spirit must stop preparing for destruction automatically. Read that carefully again. Your spirit must stop preparing for destruction automatically. Archangel Michael says delayed seasons taught you survival, but release seasons require trust again, not blind trust in people. Discernment still matters. Boundaries still matter. But your soul must stop expecting every blessing to disappear before it even fully arrives. Because what God is releasing now carries divine approval. My beloved child, there are angels surrounding your future assignment because the release attached to your name affects more than your comfort emotionally. This release connects to purpose, to calling, to the next chapter heaven prepared long before the delays began. That is why the waiting season felt so spiritually intense. Darkness knew purpose was attached to your release, and purpose always attracts warfare before manifestation. Read that carefully again. Purpose attracts warfare before manifestation. Chosen one. Heaven also needs you to understand something important tonight. Some things delayed around your life were not blocked by punishment. They were delayed because your environment still carried people emotionally attached to the old version of you. People who benefited from your insecurity. People who preferred your silence. People who felt comfortable while your spirit remained emotionally exhausted. But healing changed your energy. Your standards rose. Your boundaries strengthened. Your discernment sharpened. And because of that transformation, heaven can now release things your old environment could never safely hold. Type Amen if you believe God changed you through the process. My beloved child, very soon you will notice unusual movement beginning around your life. Conversations delayed for months may suddenly happen quickly. Doors that remained silent may unexpectedly respond. Opportunities that once disappeared may return in completely different forms, carrying better alignment than before. Do not dismiss these moments when they begin appearing, because heaven often releases blessings quietly before they become publicly undeniable. Archangel Michael says, your release season may begin smaller than expected at first. One conversation, one connection, one opportunity, one burden lifting emotionally. But small beginnings often carry massive destiny hidden inside them. Do not underestimate movement just because it begins quietly. Read that carefully again. Do not underestimate small beginnings. Chosen one, there is another hidden truth about your delay season that heaven needs you to understand tonight. The waiting changed your appetite. Earlier versions of yourself chased things that looked exciting but carried hidden instability spiritually. But suffering refined your desires. Now your soul craves peace. Now your spirit values consistency. Now your discernment recognizes emotional danger before attachment forms deeply, and heaven says this wisdom will protect the release attached to your future. My beloved child, there are people from your past who would not even recognize the version of you emerging from this delay season now. The old you tolerated emotional confusion far too long. The old you feared separation more than misalignment. The old you chased validation from people emotionally incapable of appreciating your value correctly. But suffering awakened wisdom, and wisdom changes everything. Archangel Michael says the release beginning now is not merely external success, it is internal restoration too. Heaven is restoring your confidence, your peace, your hope, your ability to believe in your future again without automatically expecting disappointment afterward. That restoration matters deeply, because healed chosen ones carry blessing differently than wounded chosen ones. Chosen one, before the release fully unfolds, heaven needs you to stop measuring your destiny by the timeline of other people around you. Comparison weakened your spirit unnecessarily during past seasons. You questioned your worth because others seemed to move ahead while your own doors stayed delayed longer than expected. But God says your timeline carried different preparation because your assignment carries different weight. Read that carefully again. Your assignment carries different weight. Type 444 if you believe heaven prepared you differently for a reason. My beloved child, the season of wondering whether God forgot your name is ending now. The release attached to your spirit has already begun moving invisibly, and very soon, the evidence will become impossible to ignore. The burden will lift, the delay will break, the movement will begin, and you will finally understand why Archangel Michael kept telling your spirit not to surrender during the waiting season. Because what heaven delayed was always being preserved for the appointed moment of release in your name. And now, chosen one, Archangel Michael says the release attached to your life is no longer only a spiritual promise hidden in the unseen realm. The movement has already begun. The atmosphere around your destiny is changing, and the things that once resisted your progress are beginning to lose their authority over your future completely. Do not scroll now. Stay with me carefully because this next revelation may completely explain why your spirit suddenly feels both exhausted and expectant at the same time. My beloved child, the final stage before release often feels emotionally overwhelming because your spirit is standing between two seasons at once. One season is ending while another is beginning. Part of you still remembers the pain of delay. Another part of you can already sense movement approaching. And that emotional tension can feel confusing if you do not understand what heaven is doing. Read that carefully again. You are standing between seasons. Type Amen if you believe a new season is opening over your life. Chosen one. There were moments where the delays made you question your value secretly. You watched others move forward while your own prayers seemed trapped behind invisible walls. You wondered whether your opportunities had passed you by permanently. You even questioned whether God still intended to use your life in the way your spirit once believed deeply. But heaven says the delay was never proof that your destiny disappeared. It was proof that preparation was still happening behind the scenes. Archangel Michael says some blessings required your spirit to mature before release could safely happen. Earlier versions of yourself still tolerated people who drained your peace. Earlier versions of yourself still feared loneliness more than misalignment. Earlier versions of yourself still depended too heavily on external validation emotionally. But the delay changed you. Pain sharpened discernment. Loneliness deepened your relationship with God. Waiting strengthened endurance. And betrayal taught you the value of protecting your spirit carefully. Nothing was wasted. Type 1111 if you believe God used every painful season for growth. My beloved child, there is another reason the enemy fought your spirit so aggressively during the waiting season. Darkness knew your release carried restoration attached to it, not temporary excitement, realignment, healing, movement, open doors, peace, confidence returning, purpose unfolding. And the enemy feared the moment your spirit would stop identifying with delay completely, because delayed chosen ones often question themselves, but released chosen ones move differently. They stop shrinking. They stop begging for access to places where they are not valued. They stop apologizing for growth. And heaven says your spirit is becoming that version now. Chosen one, there are angels surrounding your future assignment, because the release connected to your life affects more than one area at once. This is not only about finances, not only about opportunities. This release touches your relationships, your confidence, your emotional healing, your clarity, and even the environment surrounding your future. This is why your spirit has felt restless lately. Your soul senses movement approaching before your eyes fully see it externally. Read that carefully again. Your soul senses movement before manifestation appears. My beloved child, there is someone listening right now who secretly fears trusting breakthrough again because disappointment repeated itself too many times in the past. You became emotionally cautious with hope. You learned how to survive by expecting less. Part of your spirit still fears becoming excited about change because previous delays wounded your confidence deeply. But heaven says your release season requires renewed expectation. Read that carefully again. Release requires renewed expectation. Archangel Michael says, many chosen ones unknowingly remain emotionally attached to delay long after heaven already approved movement. They continue preparing for disappointment automatically because pain trained their spirit to expect struggle before peace. But tonight God is asking you to shift your agreement. Stop agreeing with hopelessness. Stop agreeing with fear. Stop agreeing with the belief that nothing good can happen quickly anymore, because what was delayed is moving now. Type 777 if you believe movement has already begun. Chosen one, there were nights where your prayers sounded more like exhaustion than faith. You kept speaking to God while emotionally drained beyond words. Some days you smiled publicly while privately carrying silent disappointment. Nobody around you fully understood. But heaven saw every hidden battle, every tear, every lonely moment, every time you chose not to give up even while your spirit felt tired. And Archangel Michael says the release attached to your name is partly connected to your endurance. You survived seasons that should have emotionally destroyed your confidence completely. Yet you are still here, still listening, still searching for God, still believing somewhere deep inside that your story cannot end in delay forever. And heaven says it will not. My beloved child, there is another truth heaven needs you to understand tonight. Some delays happen because certain people connected to your environment could not accompany the blessing safely. Their insecurity, manipulation, instability, or hidden intentions would have contaminated what heaven planned to release into your future. So God delayed certain doors until separation happened first. Read that carefully again. Some delays protected your future. Chosen one, this is why certain relationships weakened unexpectedly during the waiting season. This is why some environments suddenly became emotionally uncomfortable. This is why your spirit started feeling disconnected from places where you once felt attached deeply. Heaven was untangling your destiny from environments connected to limitation, and now the release can happen more freely. Type Amen if you trust God's timing now. My beloved child, very soon you will notice visible signs that the delay season is breaking. It may begin quietly, one opportunity responding unexpectedly, one conversation opening suddenly, one emotional burden lifting, one answer arriving after a long season of silence. Do not underestimate these moments, because small releases often signal larger movement already happening behind the scenes. Archangel Michael says, heaven rarely reveals everything at once. Why? Because gradual release protects chosen ones from becoming overwhelmed emotionally, but the movement beginning now carries divine acceleration attached to it. Things that remain delayed for years may suddenly begin shifting quickly. Read that carefully again. Delayed movement can suddenly accelerate. Chosen one, your next season carries alignment your old life could never fully provide. The people entering your future now will not constantly threaten your peace. The opportunities approaching your path now will connect to your healed identity instead of your wounded patterns, and the environments ahead will strengthen your spirit instead of draining it endlessly. This is why the waiting season mattered. God was preparing you for sustainable blessing, not temporary excitement. Sustainable peace. My beloved child, there are individuals from your past who will quietly notice the difference in your energy once this release fully unfolds. They will recognize your confidence changing. They will notice your peace increasing. They will sense your spirit no longer carrying the same heaviness that surrounded you during delayed seasons. And some may wonder how you survived what should have broken you completely. The answer is simple. Heaven preserved you for release. Read that carefully again. Heaven preserved you for release. Chosen one, the enemy expected your story to end in discouragement. Darkness thought repeated delays would eventually silence your expectation forever. But heaven says the very things delayed around your life are now being called forward spiritually in your name. The breakthrough, the opportunity, the restoration, the clarity, the peace, the movement. It is all beginning to align now, and very soon, you will finally understand why heaven kept telling your spirit not to surrender during the waiting season. Because what was delayed was never abandoned. It was being prepared for release at the appointed time, carrying your name on it. And now, chosen one, Archangel Michael says the release that heaven prepared in your name is entering its final stage of manifestation, and the delays that once made you cry in secret will soon become part of the testimony that proves God never abandoned your future. Do not scroll now, stay until the very end, because this final revelation may completely shift the way you see every battle, every closed door, and every painful waiting season you survived. My beloved child, there were moments where you honestly believed your life would remain stuck forever. You became so familiar with delay that movement itself started feeling unrealistic emotionally. You learned how to survive disappointment quietly because too many hopes had already collapsed before your eyes. And slowly, your spirit stopped expecting sudden breakthrough. You prepared for silence instead of answers. You prepared for waiting instead of movement. You prepared for disappointment instead of release. But heaven says the waiting season changed tonight. Read that carefully again. The waiting season changed tonight. Type amen if you believe your release season has finally arrived. Chosen one. The enemy wanted delay to become your identity permanently. Darkness hoped repeated setbacks would eventually convince you that your story would never truly change. They wanted your confidence buried beneath exhaustion. They wanted your spirit emotionally attached to survival mode forever. Because surviving people stop expecting abundance. Wounded people stop expecting alignment. Delayed people stop believing doors can suddenly open. But heaven says your expectation must rise again now. Read that carefully again. Your expectation must rise again. Archangel Michael says what heaven is releasing in your name carries restoration attached to it. Restoration of peace. Restoration of confidence. Restoration of opportunities delayed for years. Restoration of emotional strength after surviving seasons that nearly broke your spirit completely. And the reason this release feels spiritually heavy is because your soul recognizes movement before your physical eyes fully see it. My beloved child, there is another hidden reason the delays lasted so long. Heaven refused to release certain blessings while your spirit still carried emotional attachment to environments connected to limitation. Earlier versions of yourself still tolerated instability. You still feared separation more than misalignment. You still questioned your worth based on how people treated you emotionally. But suffering changed that. Now your discernment is sharper. Now your boundaries are stronger. Now your soul recognizes peace differently. And because of that growth, heaven can finally trust you with what was once delayed. Type 1111 if you feel your spirit has matured through pain. Chosen one. There were nights where your prayers sounded more like tears than words. You kept speaking to God even while emotionally exhausted beyond explanation. Some mornings you woke up already discouraged because the delay season had stretched far beyond what your heart could naturally understand. But Archangel Michael says heaven never ignored those prayers. Every cry was recorded. Every lonely moment mattered. Every time you almost gave up but continued anyway mattered. And now your endurance is meeting divine timing. Read that carefully again. Your endurance is meeting divine timing. My beloved child, there are angels surrounding your future assignment because the release attached to your life affects more than temporary comfort emotionally. This movement connects to purpose, to destiny, to relationships and opportunities capable of strengthening your spirit instead of constantly draining it. This is why the enemy fought your mind so aggressively during the waiting season. Darkness knew your release carried impact. Once the doors begin opening, your confidence will return. Your clarity will deepen. Your spirit will stop doubting itself constantly. And the version of you emerging from this process will no longer tolerate the environments that once kept your soul trapped emotionally. Chosen one, heaven also needs you to understand something important before this release fully unfolds. Stop mourning the delays as if they were meaningless suffering. Some things delayed protected your future from the wrong timing, wrong people, and wrong environments. Read that carefully again. Some delays protected your future. If certain doors opened earlier, your discernment was not yet strong enough. If certain relationships remained, your healing would have slowed. If certain blessings arrived prematurely, the emotional wounds you carried then might have sabotaged what heaven intended to build through you. So God waited, not because he forgot your name, because he refused to release your future before preparation finished. Type 777 if you trust God's timing now. My beloved child, very soon there will be undeniable evidence that your release season has begun. Some things will happen suddenly after years of silence. Conversations will shift. Opportunities will appear unexpectedly. Emotional heaviness will begin lifting in ways difficult to explain naturally. And strangely, the same people who watched you struggle quietly may also witness your sudden movement, because heaven is no longer hiding what was prepared in your name. Archangel Michael says your release will not require forcing doors open unnaturally. Divine movement carries peace with it. Alignment flows differently than struggle. When God releases something truly assigned to your future, your spirit feels strengthened instead of constantly drained, trying to hold everything together alone. This is how you will recognize alignment now. Not endless confusion, not emotional chaos, not constant fear of loss. Peace. Read that carefully again. Peace is confirmation. Chosen one, there is someone listening right now who secretly fears disappointment returning again even after hearing this message. Part of your spirit still remembers all the previous delays too clearly. You want to trust God completely, but emotional exhaustion made hope feel dangerous sometimes. Heaven understands that fear, but Archangel Michael says this release is different because you are different now. Earlier versions of yourself still lacked the wisdom your suffering created, but now your spirit carries discernment your old self never possessed before. Pain matured you, waiting strengthened you, loneliness deepened your relationship with heaven, and betrayal taught you the importance of protecting your peace carefully. You are prepared now. Read that carefully again. You are prepared now. My beloved child, the enemy expected your spirit to collapse before this moment arrived. Darkness thought the delay would eventually destroy your faith completely. But despite every attack, you survived, still searching for God, still listening, still hoping somewhere deep inside your soul that your story could not end in limitation forever. And heaven says your story will not end there, because the release carrying your name has already been approved spiritually. Chosen one, before this message ends, Archangel Michael needs you to hear one final thing clearly. Do not speak defeat over your future anymore. Read that carefully again. Do not speak defeat over your future anymore. Stop calling yourself forgotten. Stop calling yourself unlucky. Stop calling yourself permanently delayed. Your waiting season created endurance, not rejection. And now heaven is calling forward everything assigned to your next chapter. The breakthrough, the restoration, the open doors, the peace, the clarity, the movement. It is all beginning now, my beloved child. Very soon you will look back at the delay season and realize God was never withholding blessing from your life. Heaven was preserving your future until the right moment arrived. And when that realization fully reaches your spirit, you will stop mourning the waiting, because you will finally understand what was delayed was never denied. It was being protected, prepared, and preserved until heaven released it fully in your name.